On July 10, 2026, Princess Leonor stood on a runway in Murcia, wearing the blue uniform of the Spanish Air and Space Force, waiting to receive the final honor of a training program that had consumed 3 years of her life. It should have been one of the most celebrated days of her young career. Instead, it became something else entirely, a real-time test of what it actually means to be the future of a country, delivered without warning, without a script, and without any of the polish the monarchy usually wraps around its biggest moments. To understand why that day mattered so much, you have to understand what Leonor had just spent 3 years doing, and why the timing of what happened next revealed something about her that no ceremony ever could. Leonor began this journey back in August 2023, just weeks before her 18th birthday, when she entered the General Military Academy in Zaragoza. It was the start of a program authorized by royal decree, designed to give Spain's future monarch hands-on experience across all 3 branches of its armed forces, Army, Navy, and Air Force, in preparation for the day she becomes Commander-in-Chief. From Zaragoza, she moved on to naval training aboard the Juan Sebastián del Cano, one of the last great sailing ships still used for officer instruction anywhere in the world. And this past year, she completed the final stretch of that program at the General Air and Space Academy in San Javier, Murcia, the same academy where her father, King Felipe, completed his own flight training nearly 4 decades earlier. By the spring of 2026, the pace of what Leonor was being asked to do had become almost relentless. In April, she competed in an inter-university canoeing regatta on the Mar Menor, racing as part of a mixed team from the Air Academy and bringing home a silver medal. In May, she completed Spain's basic parachute course, becoming the first member of the Spanish royal family in history, ahead of both her father and her grandfather, to earn the right to wear a parachutist badge. She flew in an F-5 fighter jet. She trained at Alcantarilla Air Base with the Mendez Parada Military Parachuting School, jumping from 400 meters, and by all accounts training alongside her fellow cadets with no special treatment and no exceptions made for who she would one day become. Early June brought an unusually packed stretch even by her standards. On June 3, she was honored with the Gold Medal of the Region of Murcia, the Gold Medal of the Regional Assembly, and named an honorary citizen of the town of San Javier itself, a set of local honors that reflected just how deeply embedded she'd become in a community that had watched her train, sweat, and struggle alongside everyone else for the better part of a year. Just days later, she and her sister, Infanta Sofia, joined their parents in Madrid for the visit of Pope Leo XIV, standing beside the king and queen as the Spanish royal family welcomed the pontiff to the royal palace. On June 29, the Council of Ministers approved a royal decree awarding her the Grand Cross of Aeronautical Merit with White Distinction, mirroring the exact same honor her father received at this same academy back in 1988. All of that was building toward July 10. The plan, as reported in the days leading up to it, was for a full ceremony, King Felipe presenting officers' commissions to more than 100 graduating cadets, Leonor among them, an aerial demonstration, a traditional reception afterward, and a rare joint public appearance for the whole family, with Queen Letizia and Infanta Sofia both confirmed to attend. It was shaping up to be a showcase moment, the formal close of a 3-year chapter that had taken Leonor from an 18-year-old cadet to a 20-year-old officer trained across every branch of her country's armed forces. Then, in the early hours of that same morning, a wildfire broke out in Los Gallardos, in the province of Almería, several hours away from Murcia. It spread fast. By the time Leonor's ceremony was underway, the fire had already claimed lives, with reports of at least 12 people killed and more than 20 still missing. The Military Emergency Unit, the same UME that exists specifically to respond to disasters like this one, had been deployed since early morning to fight it. King Felipe and Queen Letizia had one eye on that fire throughout the entire ceremony in Murcia. And when the moment came to make a decision, the royal household chose to act rather than perform. The traditional celebration planned for later that day, the reception, the festivities that would normally follow a milestone this significant, was cancelled outright. Felipe spoke briefly before the family departed, thanking the Military Emergency Unit for what they were doing on the ground and offering condolences to the families still waiting for news of missing loved ones. The king, Queen, Leonor, and her sister stood together for a moment of silence, honoring victims of a tragedy unfolding hours away while they themselves were dressed for celebration. Leonor still received her commission that day. She was still awarded the Grand Cross of Aeronautical Merit with white distinction. She was still promoted to officer rank alongside more than 100 fellow graduates, closing out a 3-year training program that had taken her through the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, and that had made her, along the way, the first member of the Spanish royal family ever to complete a parachute jump. Those achievements are real, and they matter. But the day itself ended up being remembered for something else, a ceremony that was, by multiple accounts, shorter and less emotional than expected, restrained rather than triumphant, because the family chose to fold a national tragedy into what should have been a purely personal celebration. That's the test worth paying attention to. Not the parachute jump, not the fighter jet flight, not the years of physical and technical demands she pushed through without complaint. Spain has watched Leonor clear every one of those hurdles for 3 straight years now, and by this point, few people doubt she can handle the physical rigor of military training. The harder question, the one that actually determines whether someone is suited to sit on a throne, is what they do when the moment that's supposed to be about them stops being about them at all. On July 10, Leonor didn't get to have her big day. She got interrupted, mid-celebration, by 12 deaths and a still-growing list of missing people 200 kilometers away. And what the day required of her wasn't heroics. It was restraint. It was standing quietly for a moment of silence in a uniform she'd earned through 3 years of genuine effort, while knowing that uniform, and the ceremony surrounding it, suddenly mattered less than what was happening in Almería. It required understanding, instinctively and without being told twice, that a future monarch's job is to read the room the entire country is in, not just the room she happens to be standing in. This is, in miniature, exactly what Article 57 of the Spanish Constitution asks of whoever holds this position. The monarchy in Spain isn't a governing institution. It has no legislative power, no policy authority, nothing resembling the influence a president or prime minister wields. What it has instead is symbolic weight, the ability to represent the unity and continuity of the state at moments when the state needs a unifying face. That's a strange kind of job to train for, because you can't rehearse it. You can rehearse a parachute jump. You can't rehearse the specific moment when your graduation gets overshadowed by a wildfire and you have to decide, in real time, how to hold both things at once. It's worth remembering, too, that Leonor is about to trade this entire chapter of her life for a completely different one. The military training is over. In September, she moves back into Zarzuela Palace for the first time in 5 years, ending a stretch that took her from international baccalaureate classes in Wales straight into military academies in Zaragoza, Marin, and San Javier, and enrolls at Carlos III University in Madrid to begin a 4-year degree in political science, alongside coursework in law, sociology, economics, and international relations. She'll be doing it largely without her sister, who's heading to Forward College's Paris campus for the coming year. For the first time in a long while, Leonor will be a university student living something closer to an ordinary life, attending lectures, presumably sharing a campus with people who didn't spend their adolescence training to command a nation's armed forces. That transition is its own kind of test, quieter than a parachute jump but in some ways more revealing. Anyone can follow a rigid schedule when the structure is imposed from the outside, when every hour of the day is dictated by a training program and a chain of command. What happens when that structure disappears, when Leonor is simply a political science student attending Carlos III University like anyone else her age, is a different question entirely, and one Spain hasn't gotten to see answered yet. There's also a formal side to this transition that's easy to overlook amid the ceremony and the photographs. Leonor's military rank right now is a temporary one. She was made a cadet second lieutenant, an alferez, at the close of this year's program, not the full rank of teniente, which won't come until next summer, once the rest of her graduating class finishes their own final year of study. In July 2027, she'll return to Zaragoza, Marin, and San Javier one more time to receive her official commissions as lieutenant in the Army and Air and Space Force, and ensign in the Navy. So even this milestone, as significant as it looked on July 10, isn't actually the finish line. It's a waypoint. The full picture of her military career won't be complete for another year, which means the woman set to become Commander-in-Chief of Spain's armed forces is, technically, still finishing her own training even now. Layer onto all of that the broader stakes of what Leonor represents. If and when she becomes queen, she'll be Spain's first reigning female monarch in roughly 150 years. She'll inherit a throne that nearly collapsed under scandal within her own lifetime, when her grandfather, King Juan Carlos, was forced into exile in the United Arab Emirates in 2020 following allegations tied to his business dealings and personal conduct, a rupture so severe that her own father had to publicly and financially distance the crown from its previous king. Leonor isn't just inheriting a job. She's inheriting an institution that spent the last several years rebuilding public trust almost from scratch, and every choice she makes between now and the day she's crowned gets measured against that backdrop, whether that's fair to her or not. Seen in that light, July 10 wasn't really about a parachute badge or a fighter jet or even the Grand Cross of Aeronautical Merit pinned to her chest. It was a preview, a small, unplanned rehearsal for the actual job description she signed up for the moment she was born, first in line to the throne. Show up, do the work, and then, when the country needs you to set the celebration aside and simply stand with it in a moment of grief, do that too, without being asked twice. Leonor has now spent 3 years proving she can handle physical exhaustion, technical difficulty, and the kind of discipline that breaks people who aren't built for it. What she proved on July 10, almost by accident, is a different and arguably more important thing: that when the moment calls for her own accomplishments to become secondary, she doesn't flinch, doesn't perform through it, and doesn't need anyone to tell her what the room actually requires. Spain's future queen didn't just finish military school this July. She got handed an unscheduled final exam on the exact day she thought her homework was done, and by every account of how that day actually unfolded, she passed it quietly, standing in silence, in uniform, next to a family that made the same call she did, that some days the crown has to wait.